Welcome to Pensar Basketball Live. Today we are going to be talking about the UConn Huskies winning over the Purdue Boilermakers. Zach Edey had a big game. Unfortunately, it was not enough, and UConn ends up prevailing. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to go listen to the post game, and we're going to talk very deeply about the Toronto Raptors and potential draft implications of this game. How did Stephon Castle look? How did Zach Edey look? The Toronto Raptors, if you don't know, have a bunch of picks in the first round, a couple of picks in the first round potentially, and a very, very highly valued second round pick, the Detroit pick at 31. And Zach Edey is definitely in play there. Stephon Castle and Donovan Clingan are definitely in play for that sixth pick potentially if the Raptors move up to 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever. These are names that are definitely in play, and I think they showed a lot tonight. So we're going to definitely talk about that. And we're going to talk about the pros and cons, of conveying this pick. And, I think that a lot of Raptor fans are kind of like, do we want to keep this pick? How bad is this draft? We're definitely going to talk about that. And I'm going to make a list of pros and cons in a very succinct, very organized, very logical way. Have a video graphic for it and everything, prepared that. So let's get to just talking about the game very quickly. 75-60, big second half for UConn, right? This is a team that really turns it on hardcore, and they turned it on hardcore. Donovan Clingan was almost invisible early in the game, but I think he turned it around late. Not a really big game from him, right? 11 points, 5 rebounds. He dealt with a lot of foul trouble, but man, Stephon Castle was really good. I think Newton was amazing. And for Zach Edey, like what more can he do? But I think he got really exposed in there defensively. I think he gave up a lot tonight. And, you're going to run a post offense in 2024. I think you're going to have to live with the results of it. I also think that it's not on Zach Edey that the Purdue Boilermakers lost. I think he should be very proud of the season that he had and how far he's come. But he's not nearly the passer, nor defender, nor athlete in order to run an offense like that and just completely, UConn decided to go play him straight up. They were not going to double him. And when Donovan Clingan went to the bench, they did send a second defender over to him. And there were turnovers and there were late passes. And that's where you get to a point where you're like, okay, if you're going to run an offense through a post big like a Jokic, right? Or even a wing in the post like Doncic, that player has to be able to see double teams and punish double teams. I don't think Zach Edey was able to do that. Overall, though, how can you look at this stat line, 37 points and 10 rebounds and not think that he had a really good game? I think early on he was unstoppable, like 11 points very early. I didn't think he was going to score very much tonight. I thought Donovan Clingan was going to have him on lock, and that just didn't happen. Later on in the game, though, it did come together. The score was 30-32, and then it became 36-32, 36-30 going into, sorry, it's 30-32. Then it became 36-30. And then in the second half, it was 39-30. And I was like, this is over. This is over. And at that point, it's just the guards took over, right? And the defense of Stephon Castle was really impressive. I think the defense of the entire UConn Huskies, perimeter lineup was great. And overall, I don't think that this game was ever going to be close. I really didn't. It's nothing, in this game that I saw, even early on. Hurley was losing his mind. Coach Hurley was losing his mind. This is the first time that a college team, has gone back to back since Joakim Noah's Florida team. That's a long time. It's a very long time, and it's very hard to do, especially with the culture of one and dones. And obviously, the UConn Huskies lost a really big weapon last year in Jordan Hawkins, and for them to repeat, I think, is a testament to the culture that they have built, but also to Donovan Clingan. I think it's a big testament to Donovan Clingan and, how he anchors that defense. And, again, 11 points, 5 rebounds. It's not like he's not just – some of his passing was really good tonight. I think some of his just – he can move, man. He can move. He even took a three, which was crazy to watch. I was like, is he gonna actually take it? It didn't look that bad. I'm a very big fan. I think, in a normal draft, he probably goes in the mid teens. Maybe in this draft, he'll go as high as top 7, top 8. But I think he'll be a solid rotation big in the NBA. And he looked it tonight. It's a little less certain what Zach Edey will be, and I'm sure at some point during this live we'll talk about it. This is a call-in show. If you want to call in, definitely call in. Let's go to the post game, and then we'll get to the other stuff. I gotta remove the. Hang on one second. Remove. Andre in the 416. Clingan was just okay tonight. I agree with that 100%. That assessment is accurate.
9:35. So Tristan, Stefan, and then Cam. And coach over here. What's that? There you go. We're joined now by student athletes from UConn. If you have a question for the student athletes from UConn, raise your hand. We'll send a microphone to you. Let's start up front here to the left.
Thank you. This one is for Cam.
Your name and media outlet,
sorry.
sir?
Yep. Jake Fenner, Daily Mail. Cam, over here.
That doesn't help.
Hi, Cam.
Far left up front, guys.
The three of you were named to the top team, the all-tournament team. You especially, this is something that happened to you after you transferred to the school. Is that something that Coach kind of sold you on, those kinds of opportunities, and is that what drew you to?
No, I mean, it was all about the team and going to accomplish another championship. I had never been a part of a championship like this, and that's really what Coach Hurley and I talked about in the recruiting process. And this was our goal from day one. So to do it with your brothers and your family that you go to war with every day is just really special right now.
Continuing with questions for the UConn student athletes, second row, Wall Street Journal.
Robert O'Connell, Wall Street Journal. This one's for Cam. There was a moment there, Cam, sorry, right here in the middle. There was a moment there where I think you got a foul called on you and you were maybe looking for a jump ball or something, and you were running around and Coach kind of calmed you down, kept you from maybe getting a tee or something like that. I'm curious, how often is that going in that direction and not you guys having to calm Coach down about not going too nuts on the sideline?
Yeah, I think, we're two similar personalities, but, I was going for the offensive rebound and felt like I had the ball and, just heat of the moment reaction. But, luckily I have Coach to have my back and calm me down because I probably would have gotten a technical if I didn't calm down. So, yeah.
If you have a question for the UConn student athletes, please raise your hand. Let's go to the third row on the right side.
Nick Lawrence, I'm a major man. Is Cam. So you came into college, you only had one scholarship offer. You went to Loyola. Your first year, you were the first team in the whole country to get eliminated from conference tournaments. Just talk about the trials and tribulations to get here, get that win. And also, you have some nice hardware up against your brother. He's won the Towart, and now you are national champion. Just talk about that with your brother, a little relationship there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be here without my brother. Having 4 years ahead of me, I've always been able to watch him kind of grow up and go through similar experiences that I'm now going through. So, like I said, I wouldn't be here without him, and I'm just so thankful for all the, work he's helped me put in. And, I can't say enough about my family, and, I wouldn't be here without them, so thankful.
Next question's for Adam, and Adam, hang on to the microphone when you're done.
Yeah, for all three of you guys, Adam Zagori, NJ.com, I think the UConn guards outscored the Purdue guards 55-17. How much going into the game was it your mindset to kind of control and disrupt their guards, and how proud of you are the fact that you dominated them 55-17?
Adam, pass the mic to your left, and we'll ask Cam to take that, then Stefan, and then Tristan.
Go first.
Yeah. It was a big part of our game plan, just trying to limit as much as we can from the guards, and I feel like we did a good job at that. And, just playing confident on the other end, I feel like Coach put us in great positions to be successful all night, and it worked out for us.
Tristan.
Yeah, I mean, we knew he was going to get his points, and it took him 25 shots to get 37 points. So that was the game plan, just limit the guards, and Steph, Cam, Haas, when he got in there, they did great jobs on the guards, and limiting them and their impact.
Cam, did you have something to add to that?
Yeah, obviously, coming in, we knew Zach Edey's a tough guy to stop. We wanted to make him work for everything, but I think the coaches made a point that we'd be really locked in if we could control their three-point attempts, and I think holding them to 7, we were really just locked in on not letting those other guys get involved in the game, and I think Steph and Tristan and all the guards did a great job.
In the center of the room, please raise your hand for us.
Hi, Adi Joseph, CBS Sports. Did you guys, and this is for any of you, did you expect them to back off three-pointers? Like, you just talked about how you defended them, but did you actually expect that they would simply not take them, that they would show that, I guess, discipline and react to how you were defending them, or did that come as a surprise to you?
Tristan, can you take that one for us?
I mean, we watched their film, and they get their three-pointers off, people going down there and helping on Edey. The coaches did a great job game planning and made sure that there was a focus on that. We didn't leave the three-point line and let Edey do his damage, because he only shoots 2s, he shoots no 3s. So if he makes 15 2s like he did today, that's 30, and then where the rest of the points gonna come from. So they did a great job of scouting, and credit to them.
If you have a question for the student athletes from UConn, please raise your hand. We'll send the microphone to you. All right, we'll take one in the back of the room on the right side.
Andy Dorf, Sports Byline USA Radio Network. Talk about your guys' on-the-ball pressure, just relentless throughout the whole game, and how you made it so daunting for those guys to basically get any shot up.
Stefan, can you take that one, please?
I feel like our post defense started with pressuring the ball and just trying to limit just easy catches for Edey. So I feel like our coaches did a great job with the scout, and I feel like we executed it well, and it worked out for us.
Final question for the UConn student athletes all the way right. Can't get any further right.
This is Richard Smith with Independent News Media here in Phoenix. This question's for Tristan. Something Coach talked about on Saturday was how this team never lost its drive. They didn't act like they were the defending champions. They kept their focus. They were hungry. How much did you take it on yourself to set that kind of tone for the team? And then when did you realize that these guys were as locked in as the team was last year, if not more? Was it even before the season started?
Yeah, I wouldn't take any credit for setting the tone. That was all coach. Last year was last year. It's not defending. That trophy, 23 trophy, is in the crib, and coach office, nobody can take that from him. So, this is a whole different year, and we had goals, winning 5 championships, and, we got all those done. So, credit coach to set the tone, and everybody just follows his lead.
We want to congratulate Cam, Stefan, and Tristan. They're going to head back to the locker room. The UConn locker room is open until at least 10:05. And Coach, we'll ask you to make an opening statement, then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, first off, just like I said, I think yesterday was a privilege to share the court with Matt Painter and Purdue, one of the top programs in the country, one of the best coaches in the country, and just total class, class personified across the board with those guys. So, obviously, what could you say? We won by a lot again.
Next question is for Edey. We're going to have to hustle to bring him a microphone. Edey, raise your hand. Thanks, Edey.
Yes, Coach, you won by a lot again. Congrats. Eddie Pels from AP. After they made their 1 3-pointer, you hopped off the bench and called a timeout. I know you were in quite a lather that, but was that specifically about making sure this doesn't become a trend?
Well, that was a late clock mistake. Braden had it with 3 on the clock, and he used the ball screen. And in such a late shot clock situation, like Donovan needed to get up there high and eliminate the attempt. But just the game plan and Luke, Luke for a day and a half prep to have us as ready as he did defensively for that game was just impressive. We obviously, we didn't want to give up threes. We didn't care if Zach, took 25, 28 shots to get 30, 35 points. This whole game plan was like, no Smith, no Lawyer, no Gillis, no Jones. Keep that collective group under 18, 20 points as a group. They had no chance to win, no matter how well Zach played.
Up front, Pete.
Dan, Pete Thamel from ESPN. You won your 6 games in this tournament by 140 points. That's more than any team. You really haven't backed away as you've dominated through this. Speaking of your dominance, so I'm just curious, do you feel like this is a historic team, and do you feel like this is one of the greatest teams of all time?
I think it's up there in terms of the greatest 2-year runs that a program's maybe ever had, just because I don't want to. I guess I can't say anything about Duke because I'm going to piss my brother off. But I guess I could say stuff about Florida. But I love Billy Donovan, so I'm in a bad spot. I just think it's the best 2-year run, I think, in a very, very long time, just because of everything we lost from last year's team. To lose that much and again, to do what we did again, it's got to be as impressive a 2-year run as the program's had since prior to whoever did it before Duke. To me, it is more impressive than what Florida and Duke did because they brought back their entire teams, and we lost we lost some major players.
To the left of the aisle, Coach, field of 68.
Dan, Mike Miller, field of 68. I'll give you an opening. Afterward, Jay Wright said it was the most dominant team he can remember. So that gives you a chance there. Is that what you're going to be making your mark on? Dominance, nothing but dominance. Is that going to be the standard going forward? Is it a standard you can reach every year? Yeah,
I know things are going to be a little crazy for the next 10 days. Unfortunately, we're going to head into the portal. Like everybody else now, I've been dreading this moment. But now we're here. We'll enjoy this for a couple days. But then, we're going to, on the flight home tomorrow, we'll start talking about, what the roster is going to look like. Obviously, we graduate some players. We're going to lose a couple potentially to the NBA early entry. And we're going to dive in and put together a roster that can play a comparable level of basketball to the one that you guys have witnessed the last 2 years. I know what our mindset will be. We're going to be focusing on trying to put together, a 3-year run, not just a 2-year run.
Front row on the left side, Coach.
Hi, Coach. Jake Fenner, Daily Mail. To piggyback off of a previous question, to accomplish this feat in this era of NIL and the transfer portal, it almost could be considered something entirely different and entirely particularly special with the way the landscape currently is. Do you think that winning 2 in a row in this era is something that could be replicated again? And do you think that because you won in this era, it deserves to be held in a different regard?
Yeah, I think that's probably for you guys to decide. I think, it's obviously it's a special run. And yeah, shit, we're going to try and replicate it again. We're going to, we're going to maintain a championship culture. We're bringing in some very talented high school freshmen. Our returning players through player development will take a big jump, and then we'll strategically add through the portal. So I don't think that we're going anywhere.
Front row, left.
Brett Friedlander, SaturdayRoad.com. Dan, you mentioned your brother. He won back-to-back titles as a player. You've done it as a coach now. And could you put in perspective how incredible that is that 2 guys in the same family have done this? And what does it mean to your family?
Yeah, it's incredible. I think, it's incredible to join Bob in that club. And it just Bob was in the arena tonight. He wanted to kind of stay out of the camera lens, so it was he was in a box, enjoying the comfort of that tonight. So it was just awesome to have him here for that. And then obviously my dad. It's like my dad. I think he looks at me and he looks at my brother and he sees us coaching in college and what it would have looked like, for him if he was doing it. So I know it means a lot to me and Bob to again, we're the version of my father that would be coaching in college. We're even after back-to-back for me, I'm still just a worse version of him.
Up front on the left side.
A little bit worse. I'm getting better, and I'm coming for him.
Michelle Gardner, Arizona Republic. We've asked you about the potential to repeat. Now that you've done it, Dan, does this feel different?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. I mean, it's the same, feeling that you have. You just feel so light right now. And you know what though? Maybe it feels a little bit better because it's like the last thing. Knowing how great this team's been, we've taken, we've worn the everything shirt the whole year, and everyone in this organization gave everything so that we could win everything this year. The MTE that we were in, the Big East regular season, the Big East tournament, the regional, and the national championship. So we wanted to give everything so that we could win absolutely everything. And the thought of like Cam Spencer and Steph Castle in their short window of time with us, not to experience a national championship like we all have felt. Once we realized how good the team was, that became a little bit of a pressure point. It would have sucked today to have, blue and yellow confetti, and we'll have to walk off that court with Cam Spencer and Steph Castle.
Likely the final question on the left side, left of the aisle, Dan.
Dan Walken, USA Today. Dan, I hope I don't misquote you, but you said out on the court something about UConn giving you all the resources you need. Can we interpret that to mean you intend to be back at UConn next year? You're not going to entertain any conversations with anybody else that might have a job coming open tomorrow?
Yeah. I don't think that's a concern. My wife, you should have her answer that. Yeah.
We can maybe arrange a press conference for Mrs. Hurley in the morning. Congratulations, Coach.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she'll answer that question better than I can. Yeah, shit.
We'd like to congratulate Coach and thank him for all the time he spent here in the main interview room all week. Not a lot of mobility on Zagoria.
Whoa! I almost hit the trophy, man.
Damn.
Thank you, Coach, and thank you, everyone. The UConn locker room should still be open right now for player.
Well, I mean, that's one way to do it. Don Staley did it a completely different way. That was a completely different approach to grace than we're used to seeing. But he's old school as hell. His dad was old school as hell. And we heard a lot about his dad growing up. His dad was a coach in Jersey City. I think he won like 24 national championships in high school. Can't remember what high school it was, but yeah, his brother obviously a player. Played in the NBA for a bit as well. They're a big basketball family, and you can tell that competitive spirit. I always call it the little brother, the little brother complex. Where you're always getting beaten up by your older brother, especially if your older brother is a good sport about it and is actually good at what they're doing. It can drive you very competitively, and you can feel that for sure. And he's not wrong. This is crazy. For those of you who do not remember just how stacked those Florida Gator teams were, Joakim Noah, Al Horford behind them, Maurice Spates flanking them, Corey Brewer, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, that was a crazy Brock saying, I was watching both these teams play since March Madness started. I think the difference is that UConn had better players, including multiple NBA players, and Zach is an NBA player. Well, that cues us up for a very interesting conversation about Zach Edey. Before we get into a very interesting conversation about whether or not the Raptors should keep their pick, let's talk about Zach Edey. So, look, a lot of people have, staked their, made their points about Zach Edey, saying, how is it I think if you were watching the TSN broadcast, or I think the Sportsnet 1 broadcast, I don't know what channel was playing it, but if you were watching the Canadian broadcast of this, they played an entire segment in which a whole bunch of people offered their takes on Zach Edey. And everyone has a lot to say about Zach Edey because, yeah, he's probably, the best player in college basketball, right? Just pound for pound, stat for stat, hard to argue, right, that any one player had more of an impact. He is to college basketball what Nikola Jokic is to the NBA. A lot of differences between the NBA and college game. And I think watching Zach as much as I have over the last 2 years, I think I've come to really appreciate what he does well. I've also come to appreciate what he doesn't do well. And SP saying, why is Matas Bazelis considered a subpar defender? Seems really intriguing. And Kilal, where at 17 would be my pick, even if Koloko returns, just make things much more interesting. I don't know where this comment came from, but sure, we can talk about that. But let's just talk about Zach Edey for a second. I think that in order to play out of the post, I think what Coach Hurley said made sense. He doesn't shoot threes, right? And if he's gonna if he's gonna beat you with twos all night, and on the other end you're gonna get the cleanest and most open threes ever, right? Because with him on the court, you will get open threes. And I understand the case for why he should be good, right? We heard comparisons to Patrick Ewing. I believe that was something that was said. Would you take Edey at 17 if he's available? I would not. I would not at all. And I'm not even completely sure if I would take him at 31 if he was available. And I think that has a lot to do with just what I find to be valuable in the NBA. A post offense, running through a player, even if he shoots 60%, okay? Let's just say he shoots 60%. Let's say he shoots 65%, 68%. Is that going to consistently, is that a realistic way to run your offense? You're going to run your offense through him? I don't think most NBA teams are running their offense through him, right? There are certain limits to this, right? Defensively, I think more so than anything, offensively that you can get is, oh my goodness, would you rather have Zach Edey or Yao Ming at 22? Is this a serious question? Yao Ming by far. What? Do people understand how good Yao Ming was? I mean, this is unbelievable. Look, man, like in terms of mobility, I think he has some serious issues. In terms of passing, would you be surprised if he goes undrafted? I would be shocked out of my mind if he goes undrafted. He should not go undrafted. So one of the things that Sam Mitchell said was he thinks OKC should draft him. And I don't understand why everyone thinks that OKC needs to draft Zach Edey. They're not going to draft Zach Edey. But I'm pretty good authority that they have no interest in a player like Zach Edey. You don't understand, like, offense. I understand the logic of it. There's a guy, he's very good at basketball. He's very good at a certain segment of basketball, which is very crucial to basketball, which is putting the ball in the hole, right? There's also this entire thing about the fact that he can grab rebounds, he can set screens. He has a lot of like uses on offense. However, keeping him on the court makes your offense and defense somewhat predictable, right? In terms of just him being on the court makes everything else very inflexible is probably my point that I'm making, right? Now, consider him being, I don't know, in the paint, camping out, asking for touches like he was tonight. Does that help bigs? Does that help his guards? Does that help, like, let's just say, let's say hypothetically, the OKC Thunder do draft him because they're like, oh, we need size. We need Zach Edey. Okay, great. So on the offensive end, Now he is camping out in the paint. Does that make Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's life easier or harder? I think it makes his life harder, right? Well, you would say, well, okay, well, why can't Shai just pitch it down into the post to Zach Edey? Well, I don't know. There's a lot of reasons why you would choose to run your offense not through Zach Edey. And so Zach Edey is supposed to help Shai Gilgeous-Alexander score. Well, then you say, okay, well, Zach can just start on the paint and then he can set a screen, but he can't pop. He can't shoot. See, this delicate thing, like basketball is such a game of balance. You have to be able to tilt the balance in favor. And if he could shoot, this would be a different conversation. If he could shoot from the outside, this would be a slightly different conversation, right? Sam also said a lottery team like OKC should draft Edey. It might sound very airheaded and not airheaded, big-headed and conceited and rude for me to say that a guy who played in the NBA and coached in the NBA like Sam Mitchell probably doesn't understand basketball very well. I don't think Sam Mitchell understands basketball very well. I really don't. I've always felt that way about him. I felt that way when he was coaching. I feel that way today when I listen to him talk about the game. It just strikes me as someone who's just not a very big student of the game. And that's fine. You don't have to be a big student of the game, but is it unlikely to develop into? I think it's perfectly within reason to expect him to develop somewhat of a jumper. If he can start shooting 34% from three, I think that unlocks some of your options offensively to keep him out there. Now you can start tackling schemes to hide him defensively, which I think is, by the way, a little bit easier, right? Exactly. Who would be the best top 10 and mid first rounder to pair with BBQ? It's a good question. Edey is going to go mid-20s. He needs a Brook Lopez type of change in his game. Big Nick energy. A Brook Lopez type change in his game. So here's the thing. Like, it's not like, okay, so here's a plus for Zach Edey. He's gotten a lot better over the last 3 years. He's gotten better at reading the game. He's obviously taking a lot of defensive attention as the Boilermakers' best player on a nightly basis. I do believe that he's getting better at passing to guys. I just don't think he's a great advanced reader of the game, nor do I think he's a great shooter. Now, he's a huge human being, okay? Huge human being. He's a load. I mean, you could see even a guy like Donovan Clingan, who will be one of the biggest centers in the NBA next year, was really struggling. There are teams out there that are just not going to have anything in the world that you could possibly put on him. And I understand people's heads turning, especially people who were introduced to basketball in the 90s, 80s, 70s, etc., who are just like, wait a second, league's going small. Why don't you just pull this guy on your roster? And hey, when you do face one of these teams out there that have, this lack of size, let's just say they're a team out there that doesn't have a Mitchell Robinson, because Mitchell Robinson would clamp the shit out of him. Or let's just say, you have a team out there like the Raptors with Kelly Olynyk. You think Kelly Olynyk can stop Zach Edey in the post? No, he cannot. Right? So it's going to be 2 points every single time. And isn't that efficient offense, Rob? Sure. That's very efficient offense. Now, once he scores, how is he getting down to the other end of the court before the other team? Like, you would just be able to run him off the court. There's so many things that go into play. So here's what I need. Let me 2K this. I'm going to 2K this completely. Okay. We're going to put Zach Edey in the lab right now. I want to tell you what I need from him for him to be a top 12 pick in the NBA draft, which I don't think he should be, but here's what I need. I need him to become 10% more switchable. 10%. This just means I need him to be able to hedge out to a guard and just deter a drive, not stay with a drive, not bend his hips and move. And, we're not expecting him to do Evan Mobley stuff, but just deter the drive. Because right now, I'm telling you, man, watching him, he's very slow footed. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I need a 3. I need a 3-point shot in the mid 30s, like 31 to 36% 3-pointer, open above the break. So when he does trail the play, which he inevitably will trail the play often in transition and even in the half court, I'm sure he'll often be the last guy to come up the court because he is a little bit slower. Well, in that case, I need to pressure the opposing big to have to come up and not just be able to hang back in the paint, because that's a problem, right? The other thing I need from him is for him to become just a little bit better in condition, just so that he doesn't fade so much as the game goes on. Then let's see what he can do defensively. Can he become an elite shot blocker? Because he has not been an elite shot blocker at the college level. He's been a very good shot blocker. We saw a little bit of that tonight. But there are times where I feel like maybe just his role on offense with Purdue has kept him from being all that he can be defensively. So I'm going to need him to be like a beast defensively. And then beyond that, I think I'm going to need him to become at least 15 to 25% better as a passer, which means that once he gets the basketball in a short roll situation, I need him to be able to make the second read out of that action. I need him to, like, because at the end of the day, like, yeah, you set the screen, and then you roll down, but it's like, if it's not for you, it's got to be for somebody else. And I need those passes to be accurate. I need those to be timely, and I need those to be the right pass. So yeah, maybe at 31, if the Raptors do pick him, Darko Rajakovic would be the perfect coach for him. Teach him the game, get him into, the lab, get him a little bit lighter maybe, because all that girth and size is not necessarily helpful at this point. Get him a little bit more agile. And then, hey, you got a taller, slower, way less shooting potential, way less passing, way less athletic Christian Koloko. Congratulations. That's a terrible pick. You know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about here? I don't get it personally. That's just me. I don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get all the people talking about like all the upside and all the hype. I don't get it, because to me, basketball is a 5-on-5 sport, and the way he plays, it almost makes me, the way people talk about him makes me think that people think basketball is a 1-on-1 sport. And if basketball was a 1-on-1 sport, or if basketball was half court 3-on-3, then yes, I fully understand the rationale behind him. Now, that being said, look, Zach Edey can play in the NBA right now as backup center. Can he develop and become a starter? And I think he can. Brack, no offense, man. Like, I mean, no one is saying he's going to be undrafted, but like, there are better players than him who have, like, Jahlil Okafor is a really good example of a player who, in my opinion, was a lot more talented than him. And he is not in the NBA right now. And he was like 7'2", 7'3", and he was a top 3 pick. Boban Marjanovic, he's a much better player than him. He's a much better player than him. He is not going to be as efficient and as voluminous in his. Why do you think Boban does not play more minutes? Look at his per 36 minutes. You'd be surprised. I think Boban Marjanovic, like, could Zach Edey dominate as Yao Ming? Jesus Christ. The delusion is absolutely insane. Bro, pro scouts who are having him in the 20s, 30s, and asking whether or not he should go undrafted are not insane. They're not missing some massive part of the equation that you've just solved. They just understand that there are limitations. When you play in the NBA, you can't just hang around in the paint. There's defense of 3 seconds. You understand how fast NBA athletes are. You got to stand on this next year. What do you think of Dinkpad? So here's the thing. I don't think he has a chance in hell of going in this draft. Like, I know that he wrote the petition because he, the G League Ignite program and whatever, but like, Alex Len or Zach Edey. Honestly, I don't know. Neither. Can I say neither? Again, Alex was a top 5 pick. He is a much better athlete than Zach Edey, right? It's like people don't realize. Like, look at JaVale McGee. Look at how talented JaVale McGee is. Look at what an athlete JaVale McGee is. What do you think JaVale McGee, the JaVale McGee that he is today? Here's a question for y'all. If we put JaVale McGee as, 37-year-old, JaVale McGee today, okay, first of all, Jokic and Giannis were international players. International players are notoriously harder to scout. Zach Edey has been playing in the North American ranks for quite some years. Okay. So I'm not saying that he won't be a serviceable player in the NBA. What I'm saying is, if you're expecting him to come in and be a 25 points per game center, as I've heard some people talk about Jokic comparisons, I think you're insane. It's just me personally. The league is going a little bit bigger. I mean, there are places for bigs like this. I just think that when I'm watching him move, I don't see it. I'm sorry. I just don't see it. I don't see some of the speed that is required for the NBA level. It's a faster game, man. When you start expanding the possessions, when you start you start pushing the pace, you need to be in better condition. You need to be better, faster. There are stronger players at the next level. I mean, it's not like he's a very good college player. Please understand that he's the best player, like whatever. Matas or Castle. Ty. The consensus is that he is far too slow-footed and has very limited upside. I agree. And the only reason that I'm even remotely cautious with my hyper, extended Zach Edey is not it, is because I've been wrong about bigs before. Again, I was wrong about Walker Kessler. But when I look at Walker Kessler's numbers in hindsight, I'm almost like, how the hell did I not see it? 10 blocks per 100 possessions is madness, at any level. So, I think with Edey, again, there's certain guys where you're like, if that guy could get in shape, he'd be faster or whatever. Some people are just not athletic. Like, they're not. There's also, another downside that I would consider very heavily is at nearly 300 pounds, at 7'4", 7'3.5", 7'4", the injury risk is just so much higher with a player. So again, when you talk about investing a lottery pick into Zach Edey, I think that just kind of goes out the way. Anyways, I think all of those things. Would you take Stephon Castle at 6? So here's the thing. We can talk about this draft. We're gonna do that video where we talk about the pros and cons of losing it, and I'm sure at some point we will definitely talk about Stephon Castle, because again, I think he's a little bit underrated, and the Raptors don't exactly have a ton in terms of let's say they don't have a ton in terms of actually, there's a lot of things I want to talk about. I want to talk about Stephon Castle. I also want to talk about Ron Holland a little bit and the G League Ignite program. Definitely want to talk about Reed Shepherd and Kentucky guards in general. But first, let's talk about whether or not the Raptors should keep this pick, because I have a video, and the video is basically a pros and cons list of whether or not the Raptors should keep this pick or not. We're starting this at 44 minutes. Probably this is going to become an independent video clipped out of this video at some point too, because I think this is very interesting. Okay, so the following is the list of, okay, let me introduce this. Snap. Raptor fans have an anxiety-inducing moment ahead, and that anxiety-inducing moment is whether or not the Raptors will get to keep their pick. Fans are split on this. Some fans think that the Raptors should keep their pick because it is a high pick and there's a lot of reasons for it. And then some people say, well, wait a second, isn't the 2024 NBA draft kind of terrible? Why do the Raptors want to keep their pick in a draft that is so bad? So today, let's go through the pros and cons of whether or not the Raptors should keep their pick or lose their pick and what would happen in each case. I'm pretty firm on the fact that I think the Raptors should keep their pick, but I'm not so rigid about it that I would lose sleep on it if they lost it. So let's go through the pros of keeping the pick first. Number one, more than likely it's going to be a higher pick. As the odds are broken down, the Toronto Raptors have around a 45% chance of keeping their pick and a 55% chance of losing their pick. However, what's not often talked about is the fact that the pick that they would keep more than likely would be a top 4 pick because their odds of actually staying at 6 are very small and their odds of 5 are 0 right now. So provided the Raptors stay at the 6th slot and don't end up edging out Memphis, more than likely if they do keep this pick, it's going to be a top 4 pick. And next year's pick probably won't be a top 4 pick. So in theory, you're getting the higher pick, and the higher pick is a good thing, right? We'll see. The second thing is developing sooner. We've all talked about it all year at this channel that Darko Rajakovic, Jama Malalela, these guys are really, really good at developing talent. Well, the Toronto Raptors get this player in sooner, then he'll be a year ahead of the player they would draft the next year. So I think it makes some sense to just say, hey, get the guy in sooner, get him get him integrated in your system faster. And, that way, when you're ready to contend with Scotty in 2026 or 2027, that player will be 1 year ahead. That makes sense. The next reason is role player draft. And the Raptors certainly do need a slew of role players. They need defenders. They need rebounders. They need screen setters. They need guys. And just because this draft is not super rich on stars doesn't mean, that this draft doesn't have valuable players. It has tons of valuable players. And I don't think that it's necessarily as bad as the 2013 draft or anything like that. I mean, even if you look at the 2013 draft, there's plenty of role players in the 2013 draft. Guys like Kelly Olynyk, there's guys like Dennis Schroeder, there's guys like, and then there were a couple of stars as well. If you think about Giannis Antetokounmpo and Rudy Gobert, and it's not nearly that bad, but I mean, there's a lot of defensively oriented guys, and defense is a little bit harder to weed out in college. And I think even in the 2024 NBA draft, I can see at least 4 guys who could probably make like maybe a second team or first team all defense type team. And so, yeah, if a Herb Jones was in this draft, he probably wouldn't be being talked about as a top 10 pick, but he'd be there somewhere. If Trey Murphy III would be in this draft, if Trey Murphy III, the prospect, was in this draft, he wouldn't be considered a top 5 pick. I guarantee it. But he'd be there. Rudy Gobert, he might be like in the teens. Like guys like this, they often go, and I just think that there are a few guys who have maybe not star potential, maybe not superstar potential, but they do have 2-3-time all-star type potential. And do the Raptors need a few of those guys to round out their team? It depends. It depends on how high you are on Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickley as a core. Because if you feel like you have a core that can grow into something really beautiful, and if you feel like you have the key pieces, or that at least you have the assets to acquire those key pieces, then maybe what you really do need right now are defensive role players. Another plus is that 2024, the pick becomes a trade asset. Look, you have Bruce Brown. You have a very convertible, interesting, expiring contract. Then you have Chris Boucher. You have this new draft format, with the first round and the second round being a day apart. You have longer intervals. It's going to be basically this entire change to the draft format was created to create more intrigue for fans, that it would be better for fans, also to give teams a little bit more time to package these deals together, right? So you're going to see deals you're going to see record number of deals go down at the draft. And it's a good thing for the Raptors because they have a record number of assets. So why not add another asset to that heap? Because while they can't really trade the pick right now, because it's owed to the Spurs potentially on draft night, they can trade it. So yes, maybe a lot of Raptor fans would not be too excited to hear that the Raptors are trading their, the 6th overall pick. but this is a trade asset that can be packaged with Bruce Brown, with Chris Boucher, with something else, with RJ Barrett, with whatever, with Jakob Poeltl, with Kelly Olynyk, with a lot of players potentially, with Ochai Agbaji. You could trade a handful of things with Grady Dick. You could trade whatever, but you become a buyer suddenly. If something comes up, you have more flexibility if you have this pick than if you don't have this pick. Moving on. Talk about role player draft. Fan sentiment. Fans really, really don't want to lose this pick. It feels like the water or oasis in the desert. You know, this season's been a lot of suffering. And then there's this feeling of like, we lost 15 straight and then we lost our pick too. Oh my God. This sounds a lot like, oh my God, we lost, Fred VanVleet for nothing. We lost Kyle Lowry for nothing. That narrative, which never makes sense to me, to lose the guy for nothing or lose this for nothing or whatever, or we gave the Spurs a higher pick. Look, man, I don't really care about any of this stuff, but fans do. And so, yes, fan sentiment is very much for team keep it. Bird in the hand is better than the one in the bush, or whatever the hell that saying was. Look, man, everyone says that 2025 is really, really good and 2024 is really, really bad. But what if we get to 2025 and then there's a handful of things that maybe change what we're thinking of 2025? What if, a year is a long time. Even more so, like it's 14 months away. What happens if Donovan Clingan goes to college and isn't very good? Okay, we already see that there's a lot of holes in his game, jump shooting, ball handling, lots of stuff. So what if all the defensive unicorn stuff doesn't translate beyond high school? What if he's not that good? What if he's less, what is he being billed as? Like, I don't know what the comparison is right now, like a Andre Kirilenko plus. What if he's a poor man's Andre Kirilenko instead of an Andre Kirilenko plus? What if like the top 3 guys in 2025 are just kind of busts? Because need I remind you, 2 years ago, the top guy in the 2024 NBA draft was probably DJ Wagner. That's probably fair to say. If the draft happened today, DJ Wagner would be lucky to go in the top 50. A lot can change in 2 years. So I think it's worth just saying, NIL deals in depth, right? Again, NIL deals can keep guys in the draft, keep guys away from the draft cycle longer. There are a lot of guys who will become 4-year college players now because they don't need to go and be undrafted guys and I think that because of that, there will be less depth in the draft. So you'll have guys like Jaime Jaquez, it's becoming more common, not only for guys to stay later, guys who could come out earlier, maybe staying later. We're seeing it almost every single year, right? Andrew Nemhard was a little bit older. Julian Strother was a little bit older. Jaime Jaquez. These are all guys who stayed multiple years, right? So if that continues to be the case, well, who's to say in 2025, with all the uncertainty over the new CBA, whatever, what if a whole bunch of guys pull out because they're like, hey, let me take the NIL deal and then I'll just come out and the new CBA, which I believe kicks in 2026, if I'm not mistaken, someone correct me if I'm wrong, and that will probably scale up all the rookie scale salaries as well. And so, yeah, why wouldn't people maybe look at that? And so maybe if the Raptors are drafting 13th, 14th, a lot of the guys who might be in that range maybe pull out. I don't know. Maybe I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but is it worth saying that this could happen? The other pro to having this pick is the agents and workout. And I think this might be the biggest pro that there is for this. Okay. Having a pick in the top 6 and having a pick in the middle of the first round, which is the Pacers pick, and having the 31st pick means that, especially in a draft as uncertain as this, which means that, to me, means that the Raptors will have absolute, and by the way, being a top-notch organization. So there's 4 things working for the Raptors. Number 1 is that top 6 pick, which they will have in this scenario. Number 2 is that Pacers pick. Number 3 is the Pistons pick. And number 4 is the fact that they are a good organization that agents respect and trust to develop their clients. Okay. All of those things, and the championship shine notwithstanding, it's still there, Combine every factor that I just said, and now ask yourself, will the Raptors have an inside track to working out players? Yes, they will, which means that, let's say you pull in a guy to work out for you, and he thinks he's going to be like a top 7 pick, like a Matas Bazelis, right? Or a Stephon Castle, or a Dalton Connect, or a Cody Williams, or a Ron Holland, or a Reed Shepherd, one of these guys, okay? Let's say you pulled him in to work out for you at 6 because you have 6, right? Okay. They work out for you at 6. You like them, but you don't love them. So you put him on your board at 6. You're like, he's the 6th guy on my board. But then you get to pick 6, and the 4th guy on your board is still available. So you pick him. Guess what? The guy who worked out for you that you had 6th on your board, he's still there at 17 when the Pacers pick comes up, and you pick him up too. And he's only that high on your board because you worked him out. And he only worked out for you because you had the 6th overall pick. Guess what? He might not have worked out for you if you didn't have that 6th overall pick, and you might have been sailing blind. It's the same thing that happened with the Detroit Pistons and Jalen Duren. Detroit was really looking at Jalen Duren with the 5th overall pick, okay? And then the Kings, the Jaden Ivey didn't want to work out for the Kings, right? Or he didn't want to go to the Kings. The Kings decide to reach for Keegan Murray, and the Pistons say, oh my God, we got Jaden Ivey. And then Jalen Duren slips all the way to 13, and they pick him up too. So they got the guy at 13 that they would have picked at 5. See what I mean? And guess what? Jalen Duren's been fantastic. Some would argue he's been a lot better than Jaden Ivey. And so therein lies the point. You want multiple cracks at it. I think this is by far the biggest plus to keeping this pick. Okay. And then, of course, there is the other one, which is 2024 kind of underrated? If you want my take on that, go back a few videos. I'll definitely talk about it. Here are my arguments for team convey, because there are a ton of arguments for team convey. Number 1, the 2025 draft is better. This is unquestionably the case. Okay. Stack for stack. Pick 1 versus pick 1. It's not even close. Pick 2 versus pick 2. Not even close. Pick 3 versus pick 3. I think you get all the way up to like 18 picks down, and it's still in the edge of 2024. 2025 is better across the board. It's a better draft. It's a deeper draft. It's not a deeper draft necessarily. It is a deep draft as well, but it's just massively more talented at the top, right? Like picks 1 through 12. It's just more talented. Get it over with, right? You convey the pick in 2024, and then you don't have to talk about it anymore. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to always keep talking about it. You don't have to worry about like, oh my God, what if we lose it? What if we don't lose it? Blah, 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 blah. It's top 6 protected. You don't have to worry about it anymore. Then there's cap flexibility. The Raptors have actual cap space this summer. Guess what? If you get the 1st overall pick, 2nd overall pick, or 3rd overall pick, those are really expensive assets. You have to pay these players. And guess what? In this case, I don't think those players are actually worth that money. They're never going to be worth that money. Rookies are almost never worth what they earn. That's the point. In their 1st year and 2nd year, usually you're paying them to develop. In the 3rd and 4th year, ideally, you make up some of that value back. That's why rookies don't get tons of money, because they're usually not great contributors. Now, if you get a LeBron James, yeah. If you get a Victor Wembanyama, yeah. But the Spurs paid Josh Primo like $4 million to be the worst basketball player in the league. Okay. So I'm just saying, like, lottery picks are not always a great investment from a cap flexibility position, especially when you actually have cap space. When you're already kind of capped out, that's different. But when you, oh my gosh. Okay. I'll get to all of your questions and super chats and stuff like that right after, but just give me 1 second to go through this. So yes, cap flexibility would be on the side of lose the pick this year and keep it for next year. Okay. Then, of course, there is better value. Okay, let's think about it here. Do you want to pay a player? Do you want to pay a player $3 million to be a $10 million player? Or you want to pay a player $10 million to be a $10 million player? You know what I mean? If you, let's say this, let's just to keep it simple and nice and clean. Let's just say the player you're going to get at 6, because I'm just assuming the Raptors stay at 6 or move to 4 or whatever. Let's say that player is like a 75 overall. And let's say in order to draft that guy at 4, you're going to have to pay him $7 million times 4. Like I say, over the course of 4 years, you're going to pay $30 million. So let's say you're going to pay a 75 overall guy $30 million. Or next year, you can get the same quality of player at 12, 13, or 14. Okay. But now you get to have him for $13 million. That's like a $15 million saving across the course of the contract because you don't have to pay. You know what I mean? It'd be like if Grady Dick right now, right? Let's just say Grady Dick, he's on a contract that is assigned to the 13th overall pick, right? But let's just say, I'm just saying hypothetically, let's just say the Raptors made a draft night deal, right? With the Orlando Magic. And let's just say the Raptors and Magic traded picks. And the Raptors said, we're going to trade picks with you. We want you to draft Grady for us 4th overall, and we'll draft Anthony Black for you 13th overall. I mean, not that Anthony Black would have lasted that long, but you kind of get my drift, right? Right now, Anthony Black would be like vastly more valuable, and Grady Dick would be less valuable because Grady Dick would make more money. So obviously, this is the whole point here. It's not that complicated. I don't know why I'm explaining it for 5 minutes, but the whole point here is you would be getting the better value on your pick. Then there's the trade flexibility of it all. If you convey the pick now, that means your pick is no longer owed to San Antonio, which means that suddenly you can start trading picks. You won't be able to trade 2025 because of the Stepien rule, but you will be able to trade 2026, 2028, and 2030. So let's just say, a player comes up like a Donovan Mitchell. Well, guess what? If the Raptors really want to make a big play and they want to make a big, run for Donovan Mitchell, well, here's the package you can suddenly offer once you convey this pick. So let's say you get into the dog days of the off season. Cleveland comes calling. They say, hey, man, you want Donovan Mitchell? And the Raptors are like, hell yes, we want Donovan Mitchell. He's a perfect shot creator next to Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley, whatever. We'll worry about the defense later. But we really want a star next to Scotty and RJ and Emmanuel Quickley and whatever. I'm not saying Donovan Mitchell is a guy, but I'm just saying, let's just say a star becomes available. Okay. We can offer you 2026, 2028, and a pick swap in 2020, 30. And we can offer you, Bruce Brown, Chris Boucher, young player, I don't know, and the Indiana pick. I don't know, something like that. Or maybe take away a few of those picks and you can start making offers around Mikal Bridges, or take away a few of those picks and you can make an offer for name the star. My point is there's suddenly flexibility for trades that you didn't have before. Now, I'm not saying the Raptors should do that. I'm just saying it's nice to have options. Okay. Then there's the tank option. One of the hardest things the Raptors had to do this year was decide whether or not to tank, given the fact that they didn't have their pick. And next year, it would be really, really nice to know that if something happens 2-3 weeks into the season, that you do retain this, option. RH77 saying Raptors will sign OG. If they do, I deserve a lot of credit because that is my prophecy literally coming true. The great pro of all of this would be no more Jakob trade talk. So we don't have to hear about it. We don't have to hear about this anymore. We don't have to hear about what the Raptors gave up for Jakob Poeltl. We don't have to hear about how stupid and backwards that trade was, how washed Masai and Bobby are for making that trade, how stupid they are for believing Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam when they urged them to make that trade. All that stuff would just go away, and we wouldn't have to talk about it as much anymore, especially not in the present tense. So that would be probably okay. So this is my list basically of pros and cons in terms of that. Now, based on that, I don't know if you have any additional pros or any additional cons. If you think of them, let me know in the comments below, but I can't. And I've thought about this a lot. And so based on those pros and cons, I'm really what I said before. I'm 55-45. I'm 55% for keep pick. Okay. I'm 45% for lose the pick. I am very much on the fence, and I'm dangerously close to watching some 2025 prospect falling in love and saying I'm completely 50-50, or I might even flip myself and just say I'm for team convey. I don't give a shit what you convey, just convey it. Can the Raptors just remove the protection? I don't know. I'm not suggesting that there's not value in this draft. I actually like a lot of players in this draft, and I think I want to talk a little bit about Kentucky guards before we end this. But first, we have a super chat, which is really nice. Rank Scrub saying, I just want to say Edey would benefit from having more talented competitive teammates to scrimmage against every day. Better practice matters, in my opinion. That is interesting. And I also think, if you want to talk about Zach Edey as a, hypothetical Raptor, I think having Kelly Olynyk and Jakob Hurley to learn from would be great for Zach Edey. So yes, I am not vehemently against Zach Edey in any way, shape, or form. There's nothing against him, and I don't want to be accused of some Zach Edey hater. I think the work that he's put into his game is incredible, and that he deserves a ton of credit. And I think he's going to be a really, really good player for Team Canada. And at the FIBA level, I would not be surprised personally if he had a really good European career at some point, maybe in his later 20s. I just don't see a super long NBA career, and I hope he stays healthy. That will be a big swing factor for me. If he can stay healthy, it'll be a big thing for him. And if he can develop that jumper, it'll be a big game changer for me. Because if he can develop that jumper, we are talking about a completely different prospect. Like if he can stretch out to 3 and he can start hitting like 2-3 a game, or, at a decent clip, like we really are talking about a different player. Because he does a lot of things well. I think he has good screen navigation. Sorry, he's good screen setter. I think he's developed a lot as a playmaker. His basketball IQ is a little bit better, but yeah, I'm just not. I'm not seeing lottery potential. I know some people do, but I don't. Let's talk about Kentucky for a second. A lot of Kentucky guards have struggled historically at Kentucky. Why? Well, part of it was, and John Calipari always talked about this, was that he would deliberately create situations in which his guards especially had to struggle so that they would be better NBA players. And boy, have his guards struggled. A lot of them have. Tyrese Maxey struggled. Emmanuel quickly struggled. Their shooting splits were not what they became in the NBA. De'Aaron Fox was all right. Jamal Murray was good. Reed Shepherd has been really good. Rob Dillingham has been really good, or good. I don't want to say really good, but Rob Dillingham was good. This year, Devin Booker was all right. I think Devin Booker came off the bench, So this process of putting people through the ringer, right, makes me think Ty Washington. Is there some like Ty Washington and DJ Wagner? To me, those two guys, like, are one of those two guys either Ty on a undrafted, summer league type of deal, exhibit 10, that type of thing, or DJ Wagner as a undrafted heap, undrafted free agent type of guy? Do we need to look at these guys? The analytics are depressing on. Sorry, just got really sleepy there for a second there. The analytics are depressing for DJ Wagner, right? Like, they are really bad. He posted a negative box of minus. Obviously, his dad, DeJuan Wagner from Camden, New Jersey, and John Calipari go way back. And so there might have been some loyalty, and, John Calipari has now accepted the coaching job at Arkansas to coach the Razorbacks. And so there's something there for sure where, now DJ Wagner, it's like, where is he supposed to go now? Does he enter the transfer portal? Does he follow him there? Is he going to go and, you know what I mean? Is he going to, sorry, what the fuck is this? Oh, trade Scotty and 3 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges. I mean, we could, I think we should, wow. Okay. Cool. So yeah, so I'm curious. I just think that what Kentucky does is squanders victories in favor of development. And what's interesting is that's kind of what the Raptors did this entire year, right? I mean, I think like everything that Darko Rajakovic said today in the scrum, in the media scrum, if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. And I'll pull it up to end this live on that in case some of you haven't seen it, because I think it was a really insightful, conversation with Garrett Temple and all those guys. And they were just talking about like all the things that, they've been trying to implement. And they talked about these little things that they do, like as a coaching staff. One of those things was having players, reading out, calling out plays, and being coaches, like doing like a mock coaching thing where they're impersonating certain coaches. So Kelly Olynyk's putting on a Serbian accent and he's coaching, he's teaching the coaches. And I just think that these things elevate a team's collective basketball IQ, which is really important. But I also think like if you can, let's say, if you can do this cool thing where you can struggle on your terms, I call it struggling on your terms, right? So, sorry, what I'm trying to say is when you artificially create barriers to success in order to facilitate growth, like what Kentucky does for their guards specifically, right? Like, for instance, if I have a player like RJ Barrett, I'll just give you an example. Let's say I have a player like RJ Barrett, and I know RJ likes to go left. Well, guess what? I am specifically forcing him to go right in my offense. I am telling him that for every left-handed drive you have, you're doing like 50 suicides or something, in practice. Like, I want you to go right every single time until the point, or like even with Emmanuel Quickly, like I'm just banning floaters from his game. I'm just telling him straight up, like, I know you love to do this thing. You don't get to take floaters right now. Scotty Barnes, you don't get to take mid-range twos right now. We're just going to do all threes right now. So like, that's what I'm saying. Like, having that sort of system is going to take something away from your player that they like to do, which makes them a better player. And then it's going to make them lean into their weaknesses, which is naturally going to lead to less wins, right? Like, what if you created a system right now where Jakob Poeltl couldn't score in the paint because you were trying to facilitate some sort of jump shot for him? Be like, okay, Jakob, you can go out there and you can play basketball, but you better not shoot in the paint or you're getting benched. What? Right? Or Emmanuel Quickly, like, I need you to shoot like 12 threes off the catch, like, or off the dribble. And he'll just be like, but I want to shoot them off the catch, but no, I need you to put them down I need you to put these shots on the ground before you dribble, right? Like, I'm just making you less efficient, but I'm forcing you to develop. And things of that nature, I think, can inspire players to some extent, because you know that they know that you are losing basketball games in order to, yes, Tony's perfect. Yes. The rational comment here, like Popovich did with Sohan at the first part of the season. Exactly that, right? It's a handicap, and it's a great way to tank. I think what the Raptors did this year was really fantastic. See, most teams, when they lose basketball games, I'm talking like almost all teams when they lose basketball games, they have this really stupid thing which happens, which is guys just slowly start to check out. Mentally, they completely check out of basketball games. They stop paying attention to details. there's just not as much of a focus on film and breaking down film and all that stuff. And you just notice it. You notice that the attention to detail goes away, chemistry goes away. And the Raptors, they've gone completely the other way, right? There have been more film sessions. There's been more film study through the losing. There's been tons of things that are being implemented while the team continues to lose. And I just think that is such a break from where the Raptors were last year, right? And the players have bought in because they want to get better. Yeah, but did that really help Sohan? The Spurs fans hate him. See, yes, it did. Yes, it did. But I don't expect you to know it right now. And that's the point, right? Development. Why are most people so unsuccessful? I want to know. Why are most people so fucking unsuccessful in life? Because they have no vision for the future. They have no patience for it to pay off. Why is it that the highest paying jobs so often require years and years and years of prep and degrees? And why? You're weeding out people. There's an old social experiment, right? And again, it tests immediate gratification. I can't remember exact details of the experiment, but basically, a group of kids are placed in a room with a bunch of donuts. And so the person comes out and then puts some donuts, or the donuts are already in the room or whatever. The kids are pretty hungry, and the person says, "Here, these donuts are a day old, and if you wait within 10 minutes, we'll bring out a fresh batch of donuts." And ultimately, the people who wait for the fresh batch of donuts are more likely to be successful. I believe that was the basis. That was the gist of the experiment. And it always stuck with me. The gist of it always stuck with me because it is a good metaphor for life, in all walks of life. You will find over and over that there is a temptation for immediate gratification, right? There's a temptation to win now. There's a temptation to go all in now. And to have this patient approach is not the same as kicking the can down the road and prolonging decisions and putting things off and procrastinating. This is not the same. Procrastination, in its definition, is when you put off or delay a decision or an action to your detriment. The Raptors not delaying anything right now to their detriment. They did so last year. They learned from their lessons. They learned a lesson, hopefully. Big Knicks energy. You guys are nuts if you think Knicks aren't extending OG. Takes two to tango, my friend. You need two people to sign an extension. Can't extend somebody who doesn't want to extend. So I'm not saying he doesn't want to extend. I'm just saying, IQ is way more likely to be taken from Toronto than OG is to leave NY. Bet money. How about this, Big Nick Energy? I'll make you a deal. I'll bet you $1 million to $10. I promise. I can't even pay you $1 million. I'll bet you $1,000 to $5. So that's crazy odds. I'll bet you $1,000 to $5 that Emmanuel Quickley is not a New York Knick next season. How much you want to bet? Bet money. And I'll bet you $5 right now that you haven't looked up the intricacies of restricted free agency versus unrestricted free agency, but okay. Anyways, the Knicks are not going to get Emmanuel Quickley back. You can just dream on that. Okay, but you understand that OG is not a restricted free agent. You cannot match anything. If he sours for any reason on his treatment in New York, or if he just didn't want to be there. I mean, you got to understand, and I'm well aware of how restricted free agency works. Okay, if you are well aware of how restricted free agency works, then you know for a fact that it is much more likely that the Raptors get OG than the Knicks get Emmanuel Quickley. Even if you think both outcomes are impossible or implausible, it doesn't matter. The point is, one is far more likely to happen than the other. Here's the thing, man. the Raptors dealing with the Knicks was so crazy in so many ways. Just the fact that it happened is insane to me. You don't understand like how petty the Knicks ownership group has been. Dolan has been nuts. And okay. To be fair, he didn't say IQ was going back to New York. Oh, that's fair. Shit. You said IQ is way more likely to be taken from New York than OG is to leave NYC. Okay. So you're correct. I assumed that you meant that he would be taken from Toronto by New York, but you meant just taken from New York, from Toronto, period. That is fair. That is a total like reading gaffe by me. Reading comprehension fail by me. Okay. I don't think Emmanuel Quickley is likely to be taken from the Raptors because I think the Raptors will match all offers, and I believe most teams know that. However, if some team does offer him the max, it will be very hard, I think, for the Raptors, who have already expressed a little bit of caution in terms of wanting to pay Pascal Siakam, in terms of wanting to pay Fred, in terms of wanting to pay OG. Yeah. I wonder what team that would be, though. Would it be the Spurs? The Spurs want to pay Emmanuel Quickley the max? Tough. That's a tough pill. But yes, you're right. That if some team wants to max him out completely, that will be a very, very, very tough thing for the Raptors to match. But I still believe they would match it. Yeah. I'm not really sure. The Knicks thing, again, I've gone over it 1,000 times. I won't continue to beat a dead horse here because I myself believe that, you know, OG coming to the Raptors or coming back to the Raptors is a very, very long shot. It would require the Raptors to renounce all their free agents, etc. But there's a lot of things working in favor of that. Number one, you know, the relationship between OG and Scotty, I think, is immaculate. Number two, roster fit, need, etc. The Raptors are literally one OG Anunoby away from being a really good team. And in my opinion, a better team than the Knicks. If the Raptors get OG back and the Knicks lose OG, the Raptors are officially better than the Knicks. He is literally tilting the balance between these two teams. I think he likes Toronto. He loved Toronto. He didn't want to leave Toronto. And so this notion that suddenly, you know, this not very attention-starved guy suddenly wanted the limelight and to be in New York made no sense to me to begin with. The Raptors dealing with the New York Knicks in general made no sense to me. These two organizations hate each other, have hated each other for a really long time, actually. For the last 10 years, they've been at each other's throats, and I don't think that lawsuit was ever taken right. Darko Rajakovic was seething. It was a huge, huge embarrassment for the Toronto Raptors, that scandal, when it came out. It was a huge point of contention. I can tell you right now, just from reading Masai Ujiri's face when he talked about it, that he was so pissed. The idea that they dealt with that team at all makes no sense to me ever. It came out of the blue. And yeah, they might have been really high on the package the Knicks were offering, but even for them to come to the table and give them, by the way, a conference rival, a division rival, a long-term piece to lock up their best player, because OG is by far, in my opinion, the best Scotty Barnes defender in the league, and you gave that player to your division rival. Google the Mitchell Robinson fine, bro. Like, it just happened a couple of weeks ago. Like, it would surprise me not one bit if OG Anunoby leaves the Knicks. Okay. Brunson is way better than anyone on the Raptors. Rob, stop this. I'm sorry. Like, who cares? You think that Jalen Brunson plus Julius Randle plus who? Mitchell Robinson, Isaiah Hartenstein, Josh Hart, and Dante DiVincenzo. You think that team is better than the Toronto Raptors with Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, Jakob Poeltl, Kelly Olynyk, and OG Anunoby? Are you kidding me? Nah. No way. Hasn't OG been begging for a larger role? Bro, are you watching the Knicks? What are we talking about? Scotty Barnes and Emmanuel Quickley are a lot more likely to pass up the ball than Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. The gap between Scotty is like 25 to 30%. One is 28, the other is 22. Is Jalen Brunson 28? I don't think he is. I'm pretty sure he's not, actually. Hold on. Let me check. That's very hard to believe that he's 28 years old. He's 27. My bad. He's 27. He's turning 28. So you are correct. I thought he was 26. Anyways, enough of this chit chat. Let's get to the Raptors post game. Not post game. The media availability that they had today. I think it's a really insightful conversation. If you guys didn't see it, featuring Darko Rajakovic and Garrett Temple and Kelly Olynyk, I believe. Kelly Olynyk? Yeah. Check it out, and I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
Count, full practice count?
Everything counts. Everything counts. Good day today. We did some out-of-the-box stuff today with guys just to continue keeping them engaged. And we had actually players today to show us some clips and to coach us and to tell us what they're seeing on the court. So it was a great day for us.
I know you were asked about your strengths and weaknesses this year, yesterday, and you didn't want to get into strengths. Is there something that changed for you over the first part of the year to now, something like you're doing more of that you didn't expect to? Like, are there one or two things that jump to mind that you found to be extra important compared to your original sort of expectations?
I mean, start of the year...
I know it was a different team.
For sure, yeah. But the start of the year, I'm walking in and I'm trying to implement the system.
Yeah.
The way we work, the way we do scouts, the way we communicate, the way we treat each other, like putting the culture in, right? So, and I had a lot of on my shoulders to start the year just to do all of that, you know. And as the season is progressing, I'm relying much more on my assistant coaches to give me a feedback, and players as well, and staff and everybody, just to continue to grow, you know. So it's over here we don't operate in my way or no way. We're all in this together. We're empowering our players. We believe in our players and the staff, and we want all of them to grow and get better. So I'm trying to listen much more now once we established our identity there, and to go from there.
So when you said the players were showing you guys clips, was that like their homework to like select something and then show it to you, or did
we prepared clips for them? Okay. Then we broke down in some teams, and you know, then we coached players what they need to see, etc. And then they had to do a little presentation in front of the whole team. So it was good. It was a good day.
So they would then add their 2 cents in the presentation?
Yes. And they were also imitating coaches with the presentation. So that was special.
Did anybody try on a Serbian accent, or did they not?
Well, yeah, they did, but it was not my accent. It was Ivo's and Kelly when we did one. It was good. It was fun.
What was something that they pointed out that stood out to you?
I mean, we talked about yesterday is our game preparation. The biggest part was guarding their guard pick and rolls, and I think Washington is top 3 teams in the league in doing that part of their offense. Guard, when they set screens, when they slip out, when they roll, when they pop. And we had moments when we did really good job, especially that first quarter and to finish the fourth quarter. There were also parts of the game that we were not locked in there. So some of those clips were about that and how we can get better in that area.
When you mentioned the other night, knowing like you had that conversation with Gary about knowing when to, which guy to attack or whatever.
Right.
How do players like learn that or figure that out? Like, all right, I should be going here as opposed to there, or just having that awareness. If he's a really good defender, stay away from him.
2 things. It's on me to make a play calls to get the right players in those situations, but also like it's understanding who is guarding you and get better of reading the game. lot of times, like the pace of the game, you don't have a chance every single time to call the play call. And that's where elite teams, that's where they make the difference. You know, when you have the best players in the league, they're gonna orchestrate that part. I want that guy in pick and roll, you come over here, etc., etc. So I'm really trying to educate our whole team on importance of that and how we can get into those situations.
How's Grady doing today?
He's sore from yesterday. He went through the parts of the practice, but he's pretty sore.
And Gary?
Gary is actually feeling pretty good today.
So you're one of the few guys who's been here all year, so you're one of the few guys who can answer this. What has Darko really emphasized compared to the beginning of the year lately? I know the team is very different, so that probably affected things, but is there a way he changed or something he leaned on more later in the season versus beginning of the season?
Yeah, for sure. You know, with we had a lot of uncertainty at the beginning of the season with so many players, you know, under contract years and things of that nature. So we know the business of the league. So we were really focused on the present and trying to win every game for this season. When the trades happened and we got, I guess, pretty steady, I guess you could say, in terms of who was going to be on the team, it was more so not only this game and the next few games, but next year and future. Thinking about how we need to play, what culture we need to build for the next year, the next 2 years, the next 3 years. So I think that was the biggest change in, you know, the commentary and how we approached each day.
What's that like for players like yourself who aren't part of the young core necessarily and aren't on long-term deals here to be spending so much time talking about the future?
I mean, honestly, you know, that's what you do when you're trying to build a program, build a culture. You know, coming to this team in free agency, I've been on teams where you have a new coach, and at the end of the day, that coach's job is to build for not, you know, just this season, but for seasons to come. It's a long game in this game, especially with probably your best player, your all-star being in his third, fourth year. So you're going to have a futuristic mindset, and I knew that coming in. So for me, it wasn't anything new. It was kind of the same mentality that when I first got to New Orleans. You know, we're trying to win every game we can this year, and every game we can, but we're building something. We're building towards something at the same time.
Not necessarily positive or negative, but when comparing to your other coaches, and particularly first-time coaches, what makes Darko stand out as different?
I think the fact that he's straightforward with who's going to play each game. I think that's one thing I said from the beginning. I love that about him. You know, come shoot around or the walkthrough before the game, who's in the rotation at the beginning of the game. And that gives players a sense of, in my opinion, peace, a sense of calm. You know, you understand there's no anxiety. I think that's good, especially for young players, because a lot of guys, old school guys, don't think young players deserve to know. You just be ready regardless. So that's probably the biggest difference. This first time in my career that I've had a coach that did that, and I enjoyed it.
What's that like for you in a game like last night, where I guess he probably told you before the game, or what did he tell you before the game last night?
I didn't get into the second half,
Right.
so he always said, first half, you know, this is the rotation, it can change, and it was second half, and it did change. So they told me probably 2 minutes before I got in, so I just got a couple of hot packs, stretched my calves, my Achilles a little bit, and got ready.
Just given the fact that your role has had to expand over the past month and a half with all the injuries and outs, do you find that your words started to carry more weight in the locker room and guys really appreciated you because you were so able and willing to jump in when needed?
That's a good question, Savannah.
Thank you.
No, that's actually very much the case, you know. I've always been a guy that was, you know, that talked a decent amount. And it was easier when I was playing because I could show guys, you know, if I made a mistake, I took responsibility. If not, then, you know, I'm playing hard, trying to do the right thing. When you're not playing, it's not as easy. You know, guys may say, well, you're not even playing. It's easy for you to say. But when you go out and actually, you know, try to compete at a high level every night, then at the end of the day, they have to respect that. And more times than not, they, like you said, the words mean a little more once they see you out there, you know, laying it out on the line.
Is that what happened with Bad at the end of his run here? Bad started playing really well, and he said his voice resonated a little bit more because he was out there banging.
With the new guys that just came. Now, obviously, Thad played the last year and the year before, so guys knew what Thad could do. But the guys who just came,
no idea.
Grady and then obviously other guys that had just come. So that definitely, it just is what it is. It's human nature. You know what I'm saying? It's always easier said than done. And then if you can still do it, then you can say it. And, you know, if I can do it at 37, then they should be able to do it at 24, 25.
Are you going to go for 40?
I mean, I don't know. We'll see, man. We'll see. My body feels good enough to jump in after an hour and 15 minutes of sitting on the bench, so I think I'll be able to play another year or two.
What stands out to you about Pascal and his leadership and just when you're playing with him here?
Just his intensity, his ability to you know, go all out, practice hard. I think the biggest thing with Pascal was his ability to show the work ethic. A guy that came from where he came from, but still putting work in every day. Probably the hardest worker on the team. I think that was the biggest thing about him. It wasn't vocal. It was more just, I'm coming in, I'm putting work in every single day. And in my opinion, if your all-star was doing that, then it should light a fire under everybody else.
The league's changed a ton in your career. When you look at a guy like Zach Edey, who's maybe would have gone first overall, let's say, at the beginning of your career, how have you seen the league change for a guy like that at the center position?
That's a great question. You know, Kelly Olynyk and I were talking about, you know, if you're a lottery team, who goes to get Zach Edey? You know, you put your GM hat on, and I would think a team like OKC would be a good fit for him because they need a big body and they got to go against the big bodies in the West. Jokic, you know what I'm saying? Valanciunas, things of that nature. But honestly, it's less teams that like playing with a traditional big center, even if you are very efficient in the paint, because of the importance of the three ball and the importance of being able to switch on the defensive end. But then on the other flip side, you got guys like Rudy Gobert that you know, don't shoot a lot of threes, but I think the difference is he's a little more mobile, maybe. So it's going to be interesting. I think Zach is a guy that can dominate in the paint, and it's ebbs and flows in the NBA, man. It's always ebbs and flows. You got two great centers playing tonight, so it's going to be interesting to see, you know, who comes out. But I think both of them definitely have a long career in the NBA. It's just a matter of who picks them and what situation they're put in.
Do you think the teams have to have the balls to take them?
I think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
like
the thing, right?
you know, like I think about.
It's a gamble.
I think about like J.B. Bickerstaff playing big in Cleveland. You know, especially even when they had Lowry marketing, they had 3 7-footers starting, and they just did what they did. Now, obviously, Lowry was a spacing guy, and Evan Mobley could move at the 4. So it's definitely, you know, about having the gall to we're gonna, you know, because we know he can play, we know he can move. He's improved every year. I don't know how many shot blocks he averages a game, but I know one thing, he can score that ball in that paint. And paint points, the teams with the best offense score the most paint points in the NBA. That's just the reality. So it's going to be interesting to see. I'm glad I'm not a GM that's drafted. I know that.
Did it go slow or did it go fast?
It's a good Matt. Like the whole season or just here?
This year.
I would say like after the trade, or after All-Star break, like game 28 to 20 went really slow, and then like the last 15 games went pretty fast. Yeah.
Through all those losses, this team it never fractured. It never split it apart. Never got on each other. Like, what's that speak to the group?
Yeah, I mean, I think you just have, you know, good, high character guys. You know, the coaching's been good. You know, the positivity's been good. You know, just I mean, we brought in a lot of guys, so it's kind of, you know, tough to just think it's gonna just come together and snap your fingers. So, you know, for us, it's just about, you know, being professional, coming here every day and trying to give these young guys, you know, the best experience that we can, and, you know, help share what we know, learn and grow, and, you know, continue to get better.
You mentioned the coaching. In Utah, you were obviously with a guy who's considered one of the better young coaches in the league.
Yeah.
What have you learned about Darko, and specifically, like, what would you say his strengths are as a coach or leader, or whatever direction you want to go with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think his personality and character is really high. You know, guys, you know, like to play for him. He gets on you, but he also keeps it a light atmosphere, which is nice. But yeah, I mean, I think that just his style of play, coming from overseas in Europe, and growing up in that style of basketball, really, it's fun to play. Everybody moves the ball, touches the ball, pass, cut, kind of all that. So, I mean, obviously, there's a lot more depth you can get into. I'm sure that he wants to get into when we have a full roster for a longer period of time, where you can kind of get to second and third and fourth reads and continue to build. But that's obviously next season. Then.
Yeah, but saying that, there were realities behind the losing streak, that were beyond everybody's control.
Yeah.
So, how do you think he managed the line between saying, well, we can only do what we can do, with still holding you guys to a certain standard?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I've been on some teams where just the end of the year, you're losing, whatever. You don't practice, you don't watch film, you kind of just pack it in. You roll out in the game and kind of go through the motions, but that hasn't been the case here at all. I mean, we've watched more film in that losing streak than we did, when we win or whatever it is. So he's continued to, like you said, hold people accountable, keep people honest, continue to build habits for the young guys and as a team, and that's been big. And I think that you kind of see that in the last few games.
What's the potential that you're seeing from this group of players, this young core?
Yeah, I mean, even these last two games, having, like I said, Quick and RJ and Gary back healthy and playing all together, you're seeing a little bit of that potential right there. And now you throw Scotty and Yak and everybody else into the mix, and it's going to be a fun opportunity. Yep.
I don't want to call it a blessing in disguise, but when you have so much injuries and guys who are in the main rotation out, it forces other players to, I imagine, get that into game reps. Do you feel like when people come together, it makes the team stronger when everyone's healthy because of that?
Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, it can go a couple different ways, though, right? Because now you bring everybody back, and now everybody has different roles, and kind of, guys like Grady were used to starting and shooting and having plays called for him, which is great. He needed those reps, and he's really excelled and gotten better even since the month and a half I've been here, or whatever it is, 2 months I've been here. But now you bring other guys back into the mix, and you kind of have to reevaluate, reassess, and redefine your roles and how they fit together. So it's a little bit different, but you just have a lot more depth, a lot more firepower. Yeah, I think it's a good thing because, like you said, the only way you really learn, grow, and get better is through game reps and game experience, and it's hard to get young guys that in the midst of a battle in the season. So to be able to do that now, and now going into next year, to have that under your belt really helps.
You've played against Zach Edey, I think, with the Canadian team. What's it like playing against him like that?
Yeah, I mean, he's a big body. Obviously, it's different playing against someone like that in the spacing and dynamics of the NBA than the spacing and dynamics of college. You can kind of just sit in the paint. There's a lot of post-ups, keys narrow, all that kind of stuff. But, Zach's a really, really good player, and he's gotten a lot better. I've said this to numerous people. He's gotten a lot better over the last 3 years, 4 years since I've known him. His body has improved, his speed, balance, quickness, his strength, his functional strength has improved, his skill. But for me, I mean, a lot of his IQ has improved, his basketball IQ. So, yeah, I mean, he's a really good player, and, obviously he's a force down low on the glass, in the paint, blocking shots. He really alters and changes the dynamics of the game. So it'll be fun to watch him tonight.
A few years ago or whatever, he might have been the number one pick in the draft, and now there are questions about him as an NBA prospect. How do you see, in this modern league, a guy like that transition? You touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different game. It's a lot of spacing, a lot of quickness, a lot of 1 through 5 pick and roll. You got to be able to kind of be out on the perimeter, move your feet, do this, that. But there's definitely a spot for him. There's guys in this NBA. You need size to guard certain people at some times, situationally, but he's going to be a force and a load on either end of the floor, no matter what you do. And you can run different schemes and stuff to make it work. It's just whether it's how dedicated you are to it.
Thanks for watching the Toronto Raptors YouTube channel. Check out our...
Okay. So this conversation here, I apologize. This is probably a very rude thing to say, but I'm just going to say it anyway. This comment: if you swapped Donovan Clingan for Zach Edey, UConn would win by 50. You might be exaggerating, but this is crazy. Even the notion that UConn gets better with Zach Edey is, to me, crazy. Purdue definitely gets worse, but UConn definitely gets worse too. Once again, just because one guy scores a lot of points, the way he scores, through his usage, etc. So I figure it might be a good time to look at some stats. So let's look at some stats. Guess who this player is? This is Jahlil Okafor, a 28% usage player who had 6.7 win shares, a 10.4 box plus minus as a freshman at Duke. Okay. Again, the ACC, the Big 10, Big 12, these are all really tough conferences. To go in as a freshman and do this is madness. Frankly, there's no reason to believe that had he stayed 4 years, that he would not have had a much better, and I mean much better, college career than Zach Edey, given where he started in their relative, comparison. Okay. Now I'm going to flash for a second here Zach Edey's numbers. Okay. And granted, he started out as a much worse freshman than Jahlil Okafor, and he was a lot less highly ranked. But nevertheless, per game, Zach Edey as a freshman averaged 8.7 points per game, 4 rebounds per game, 1 block per game. But I think most relevant here would be the per 100 possessions. Okay. And even as a freshman, he averaged 35, 18, 4.4. He was extremely, extremely valuable as a freshman. But note something here that has never changed. He has always averaged more turnovers than assists. Always. Always. Okay. His 4 blocks per game, per 100 possessions, as a 7'4" player, as a senior who's 22. You understand the gap between a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old? It is mammoth, massive, okay? He is playing against people who are half his size and sometimes 3-4 years younger than him, sometimes with teammates that are a lot worse than his teammates, and he's dominating. How do you scale that domination up a level is really the challenge here. Now consider another player or another set of players, which is players who don't play in college basketball, which is to say players who play overseas against grown men, or even players who play in the G League. Players like Ron Holland, players like Matas Bazelis, players who, by all accounts, have had disappointing seasons. Okay. So we talk about Zachary Risache. Okay. How do you compare what somebody is doing in France or in the or in the NBL, or someone like Nikola Topic, what he did for Mega, what he's done for in Europe, what he did against Partizan. How do you compare that to what Zach Edey is doing in the Big Ten? I think this is a very fair question to ask, and analytics models are all over the place on this. I will tell you this. Take a player like Zach Edey and you put him in the NBA. This is not the same game anymore. This is not the same game. Not the same competition, not the same rules, not the same structure. No one in the league is going to structure an entire offense around him. I think it's worthwhile to say that he's going to have to change his game a lot. And in order to do that, there's going to have to be massive changes to his body, massive changes to his game, massive changes to his skill set, massive changes to his minutes, reductions, etc. And you just haven't seen that. You haven't seen that. And so anyone who says they know that Zach Edey is going to succeed in the NBA is guessing. And anyone who says he's not going to succeed in the NBA is guessing. Your guess is as good as mine. But I don't think he's going to be what you think he's going to be, if you think he's going to be a star or whatever. But for a change of pace guy who can grab some offensive rebounds, put some, putbacks and, hustle and maybe just, rack up some fouls or something like that, yeah, sure, I could see it. But I think you saw it tonight. I think you saw the limitations tonight in terms of what can be done and can't be done. And, honestly, yeah, like you put a 22-year-old, 300-pound guy that close to the basket, literally, unless they are the most uncoordinated, unskilled big, they're going to score some points in college basketball. It's going to happen, especially when you have an offense that is structured around them getting touches. And, you ask yourself, how much better does he make his teammates? If his passing is so limited and his defense is so limited, right? Defensively, he is limited in terms of, being a perimeter defender or whatever, showing and being able to guard out to the 3-point line exclusively as a drop big. Yeah, there are some limitations. And look, I don't deny that he was Purdue's only chance today and this season. They didn't have great recruiting classes. They don't have a lot of talent around him. And so, again, this is the Cade Cunningham argument in Oklahoma, right? Like Oklahoma State, like he doesn't have a lot of help. Okay. And so his contributions become magnified as being overstressed, right? I think there's something there. Let's take a look at some Kentucky guards just for fun, because I just want to look at how Kentucky guards have done throughout. Okay, and then we'll end it on that. So here's Ty Washington as a freshman. We're going to look at boxes minus as the catch-all metric for this, just to keep things nice and even. Ty Washington as a freshman, 7.4 boxes minus. He is currently out of the league. Per 100 possessions, he averaged 25 points, 7.7 rebounds, 6.8 assists. Also, here's a random fun fact. Do you know in last year's draft, there's not a single player drafted who was under 6'2"? Consider that. Okay. The league is getting bigger at the guard position across the board. So it's just worth noting where the Raptors' minds might have been given where the league is headed relative to Fred VanVleet, all the conversation around extending him, etc. I think that's worth saying. So there's one Kentucky guard who didn't make it, quote unquote, so far. Okay. Let's take a look at Devin Booker. Let's see if we can't see. Let's see if we can't see a little bit. Sorry. I don't know why I clicked on Devin Vassell. Devin Booker. So here's not starter Devin Booker, 9.4 boxes minus as a freshman, 4.5 win shares. He averaged 29 points, 5.8 rebounds, 3.2 assists as a freshman per 100 possessions. So a little bit of an uptick, if you will. Now let's see how Tyrese Maxey did. Interestingly enough, if you follow Tyrese Maxey at Kentucky, you'll know that Coach Calipari had some very, very interesting things to say about him at the draft, saying the teams would regret passing on him, that he was going to be a really, really good player, that a lot of teams are going to regret it. And they have. But as a freshman, his numbers were not great. 4.4 boxes minus. So technically worse, right? And why was that? Largely was due to 3-point shooting percentage. He shot 29% from three. There were a lot of questions about his jump shot coming out. Might be worth thinking about when you look at guys like Stephon Castle and guys like, guys who struggle shooting the three. Even a guy like Bronny James, look at a guy like Ron Holland, who's had to adjust for the first time in his life shooting to, the G League. I mean, going from high school to G League 3-point line is a really, really big adjustment. So maybe look at 3-point shooting percentage across a small sample size of 30 games, 31 games, etc. is not the end of the world. Just because the guy shoots 39%, 39% does not mean he's going to be a lights out shooter at the next level. Just because the guy shoots 27%, 26%, whatever, does not mean he's a non-shooter. This is a really small sample size. Luck plays a huge part in shooting. I think people need to adjust for that. Luck, system, minutes, opportunity, volume. There's a lot of stuff there. But according to these numbers, Tyrese Maxey was not supposed to be good. So the analytics on Tyrese Maxey are wrong. Emmanuel Quickley Wasn't too much better as a freshman, if I recall correctly. 3.8 boxes minus as a freshman was terrible. That's terrible. It's not quite Bronny James bad, obviously. It's definitely not DJ Wagner bad, but it's bad. It's bad for an NBA player, a guy who hopes to be an NBA player. 7.3 as a sophomore, he comes out. He doesn't go in the lottery, despite being a Kentucky guard and all the success Kentucky guards have had. He ends up going 25th overall to the Knicks, and he has a brilliant rookie season. But there is some serious progression from 3.8 to 7.3 boxes minus. Per 100 possessions, again, as a sophomore, he just jumps all his numbers up. Except for assists, everything was up, right? So he was just a much better player. Let's look at De'Aaron Fox. Another one and done prospect. De'Aaron Fox had an 8.2 boxes minus. He averaged 30 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds, 2.7 assists, 2.7 steals per 100 possessions. So one of the more successful Kentucky guards. Let's look at Jamal McGlure. What am I missing here? All right, I think Jamal McGlure, Jamal Murray. How do you spell Jamal? What? There we go. Jamal Murray, 9.5 boxes minus. So definitely the most successful, slightly more successful than Devin Booker so far in terms of the boxes minus. 33 points, 8.6 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.6 steals. He ends up going in the top 10. He goes 6th or 7th overall to the Denver Nuggets out of Kentucky. He was good. And let's look also at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Shai ends up being a 9 box plus minus guy. So again, we're seeing closer to the 9 for guys who've been successful other than Tyrese Maxey. Most of everyone we've looked at so far has been successful nevertheless, but I'm saying like the guys who went lottery are closer to 9, 8, than 6 and 5. 24 points, 8.7 assists, 7 rebounds. Shooting was a bit of a concern, but the volume was concerning. 40% from 3. It's a good shooter, but not super high volume. That was a concern. Now let's look at Rob Dillingham and see where he stacks. Rob Dillingham, here we are. In terms of boxes minus, I think he was pretty solid. He's at 6.2 boxes minus. Most of that being carried by his offensive boxes minus. 35 points, 9 assists, 6.8 rebounds. Per 100 possessions, he's averaging more assists than almost all those guys, right? So again, Kentucky guards tend to struggle with their numbers, across the board. But I think for a guy who's been deemed as not a point guard, the fact that he has so many assists probably is a good thing. He is, however, very turnover prone. 4.6 turnovers per 100 possessions is craziness. So far, all the Kentucky guards we've looked at, we have not seen anyone clip 10 in any situation whatsoever. And of course, I'm leading up to a guy. Named Reed Sheppard. I'm gonna look at his numbers. And this is why people who understand stats and understand the numbers are going so crazy over Reed Sheppard. Here are Reed Sheppard's numbers. 11.4 boxes minus, 23.3 points, 8.4 assists, 7.7 rebounds, 4.6 steals, 3.7 turnovers. What does Reed Sheppard do that makes his numbers so crazy? Well, he's a very error-free basketball player. He doesn't turn the ball over a hell of a lot. So he's like 1.2 turnovers less than Rob Dillingham per 100 possessions. He does handle the ball a lot, but he's not a super high usage guy. He just makes the right plays. He's also a two-way player. He has a huge impact on the defensive end, and the numbers show it. The on-off numbers show it. And yeah, it's just a very error-free basketball player. There aren't a lot of players who've managed as guards to be 11, 12, 13, whatever boxes minus as freshmen. One guy whose numbers are close, in my opinion, to him was Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball was the number 2 overall pick. He played in a very stacked conference, the Pac-12, and his numbers were at 12 box plus minus. A lot of people were really, really gaga over this. He also had an 18% usage. His numbers: 16 points, 8.7 assists, 6.8 rebounds, 2.4 or 2.8 turnovers, and the 2.1 steals. So I mean, like, sorry, that's per. I apologize. I was looking at the per 48 numbers. So the 2.8 steals, 11.7 assists, 9.2 rebounds, 22.4 points. It is interesting. The numbers are comparable across the board. Analytics, all of it. The usage, the turnover percentage, everything is comparable. And in fact, I think that Lonzo Ball is a pretty good comparison for Rob Dillingham, regardless of the numbers. And I think that's largely because they impact the game in so many different ways. And largely, I find them to be very, very. Malik Monk also had a 9 box plus minus. Yes, Malik is another Kentucky guard that we forgot to look at. Hold on, let me just take a look at this. 2017. There we go. Malik Monk, 9 box plus minus. Another successful Kentucky guard. If you want to look at unsuccessful Kentucky guard so far, take a look at DJ Wagner. DJ Wagner is one of my favorite prospects going into this draft cycle. I'm a really big fan of his dad's. Really sucks what happened with him in the NBA and didn't work out, but I was a really big fan of his growing up. I got to see him live quite a few times. And of course, when you see a player that prolific in high school, it does taint your perspective because you are literally watching this guy dominate the competition in a way that you just don't understand at that age. Like I was, oh God, how old was I? I was like 14 or 15 years old watching DJ Wagner live in New Jersey. And like I gotta tell you, like some of the best players I've ever seen play live: Luol Deng, DJ Wagner, Brooke Lopez. Those are Brooke and Robin, Charlie Villanueva, LeBron James. These are some of the Carmelo Anthony, guys like this. Like when you saw these kids live, like they're just a little bit older than me. So like I was watching them as a younger kid, looking up to someone who was older than me. Watching them in a high school gymnasium do the things that they were doing was insanity. They were bigger, stronger, and you just could not imagine a situation in which they wouldn't go to the NBA and be like superstars. I thought Luol Deng was going to be like the best small forward in the NBA when he got drafted. He clearly wasn't. But that's how you feel when you watch these players at a youth level, because it's hard to imagine that the guy who's dropping 40 with his eyes closed could be anything but a superstar. But you learn. You move on. That being said, here are DJ Wagner's numbers. And again, this is another player who just really, really, really struggled as a freshman. And I doubt that he comes out, and I'm pretty sure he reclassifies, or not reclassifies. I think he might even put in for the transfer portal or whatever, depending on who coaches Kentucky next year. But negative 0.4 box plus minus, 20.8 points per game per 100 possessions. 6.9 assists to 3 turnovers. Not the worst, but also not good. Struggled 29% from 3. I think he's a better 3-point shooter than that. Is this a guy who just has enough talent where you're like, hey, is 29 games, is this even a sample size that I care about enough to wipe out all the college stuff? Because Shaedon Sharpe didn't play in college, and he goes top 7. I'll tell you right now, if DJ Wagner sat out college, if he just sat out the year because of an injury or whatever, he probably is a lottery pick. But he played, and he's not a first rounder right now. So would you take a flyer on a guy like this in the 40s, 50s, given the lack of talent in this draft? I don't know. Dang, I thought BJ Boston had a bad year. Facts. So yeah, I mean, like there's not a one size fits all when it comes to college prospects in tough conferences and what their numbers look like. But typically the cutoff for impact metrics for me is 7 box plus minus. That tends to be like around where we're at. Jason Tatum was a 7.9. It doesn't mean that if you have 12, 13, 14, 15, that you're necessarily better than the guy who has 8 at the next level. Grady Dick didn't have a crazy box minus either. I think he was closer to 8 than anything, but like, let's just take a look quickly at Grady's stats. He was 7.7. 7.7 boxes minus per 100 possessions. Grady was 25 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 2.5 steals, 2 turnovers. 2 turnovers to basically 3 assists is, again, look at the system, look at the conference, Big 12, right? Look at his role. You have to look at all of this. When you're going to look at this, I guarantee you there's a coach in college basketball in some conference for some school somewhere that could have oriented an offense to make Grady an 11 or 12 boxes minus guy last year. He was talented enough for sure. You got to look at all this stuff. You got to look at the roster around the guy. You got to look at his role, his usage, all of it. What he does well. And this is why it's not so easy to always project. There's been a lot of guys. I am curious to see Trayce Jackson-Davis and his progression because his numbers were crazy. Take a look. In his final year, Trayce Jackson-Davis had a 16 box plus minus for Indiana, which is, again, in the Big Ten, one of the best conferences, a 34 player efficiency rating with a 60% true shooting per 100 possessions. The dude was averaging 35, 18 with 5 blocks, like ridiculous numbers, right? And this guy nearly went undrafted. Granted, a little bit overblown. He probably would have gone early second round had he not asked teams not to draft him. This is the type of player that is currently starting for the Golden State Warriors. So you look at a player like this and you ask yourself, is he the college equivalent of a Zach Edey? Because if we look at Zach Edey's numbers, they're actually pretty close. They're actually better than this, believe it or not. So Zach Edey, I think I've already flashed this on page here, but look at his numbers here. You got 16.7 boxes minus per 100 possessions. Zach Edey averages 46 points, 22 rebounds, and 4 blocks. That is ridiculous. And so you might ask yourself, Trayce Jackson-Davis, Zach Edey, what's the difference? The difference is mobility. That's really it. That's what it is. It's mobility, scalability, role player potential, speed, how they fit into an NBA offense, all that stuff. But the production is notch for notch. Edey's a better player in college. Trayce Jackson-Davis, better player in the NBA. I think it's that simple. Oscar Tshiebwe is another example of a very dominant college player that didn't go very high in the, does not factor very high in terms of NBA, analytics and stuff. He was a 13.3 boxes minus guy at Kentucky, as a junior, right? 35 PER per 100 possessions. He was putting up 29 points, 24. In his third year, he was 31 points and 28 rebounds and 3 blocks. That's pretty dominant, right? But again, he did not. He was not drafted high. I don't even think he was drafted. Was he drafted? He was drafted either super, super late. And he was like the best player in college basketball by some people's estimates for a long time, right? He won a Wooden Award. He won a Naismith Award. There's another example of a guy, Drew Timme. Drew Timme is another example of a guy who was just an extremely good college player that just probably doesn't have much of a chance in the pros. Look at his numbers. As a sophomore, he averaged 11.7 boxes minus. In his final year at Gonzaga, again, Gonzaga not exactly in the toughest conference, don't exactly play the toughest schedule, but tough enough. 37 points, 13 rebounds, 1.7 blocks, 5.7 steals. 5.7 assists per 100 possessions. To my earlier point, Cam Spencer's boxes minus this year is 7.3. Nathan Taylor. Peyton Watson was terrible in college and was drafted based on his height and mobility skill ratio. Agreed. Cam Spencer, loved how he played tonight. Don't think he's really an NBA player. Peyton Watson. Honestly, Peyton Watson was one of my favorite players coming out of that draft cycle. If you all remember my draft grades, I ranked the Nuggets very highly for drafting him and very low for drafting Christian Brown. And I was like very pissed off that they didn't invert those. So I was very high on Peyton Watson. Peyton, it just came down to defense, and defense is harder to judge analytically, right? So interestingly enough, Stephon Castle today impressed me a lot. Not quite Peyton Watson level, but like defensively, I was very impressed with. So there's three guys in the top 7-ish prospects, that top 8 prospects. Ron Holland, Stephon Castle, actually 4 guys, Nikola Topic, and also you could probably, if you wanted, throw Cody Williams in there. There's 4 draft picks, 4 guys, 4 perimeter players, 4 guys in the 6'6", 6'7" range, in terms of height, that have questions around their jump shots. I kind of trust this coaching staff to fix jump shots. I know that we've been talking about this for a long time. The Raptors draft non-shooters. They think that they can fix them, and then they're not. Then they're still, a couple of years later, they're still non-shooters, and everyone's still complaining. Delano Banton has become a better shooter. Just saying. Scotty Barnes has become a better shooter. Pascal Siakam became a better shooter. A lot of these guys became better shooters. So I think if you're going to judge whether or not it's easier to turn someone into a better athlete versus, a more, a mobile defender, whatever, and, get the hip switchability and hip flexibility right, or if it's easier to, I think the Raptors can make people better shooters, and I think they can make people better, decision makers. And so if you have like a super athlete that is showing you commitment and self-awareness, I believe I'll trust the Raptors to develop that player into something more than what they are. That's just my 2 cents on that. I say this because I saw people on Twitter compare him and Bronny, but Bronny is really small, listed at 6. Yeah, Bronny's definitely closer to 6'1", 6'2", and his position. He's just been really unassertive this year for USC, and that program was a mess all year. The couple of games that I watched of theirs, I didn't really necessarily, watch him. Watching him, he was kind of like playing hot potato with the basketball. He wasn't really looking to initiate, and I think that really doesn't do well for him. Unlike DJ Wagner, he did manage a positive box plus minus, but negative offensive box plus minus. Per 100 possessions, Bronny James averaged 14 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, 2.3 steals, 0.6 blocks, and managed to shoot 26.7% from 3. Is his jump shot broken? I don't know. It doesn't look great to me. And it's like you got to choose, right? Like, which, and again, people struggle for a variety of reasons from 3, right? Like, let's just say, for instance, I'll give you an example. Grady Dick is currently shooting like a crazy percentage, right? From the corners. I think he's like one of the top 10, top 12 corner shooters in the NBA. Guess what? Let's just say that Grady Dick's season, his rookie season, ended at the 30-game mark. What was he shooting at the 30-game mark? He was shooting below 30%. So is Grady Dick a bad shooter? Fuck no. Grady Dick is a great shooter. Grady Dick had a really rough start to the season. Look at Pascal Siakam. First 30 games, right? What I'm trying to say is luck, shooting variance, system. There's a lot of things that go into it. What you need to do is independently look at the jumper, look at all shooting indicators, and determine whether or not the person has shooting potential. There's a lot of things that flash shooting potential. Number one is how consistent is their shot from shot to shot. So look at 25, 30 different clips of them shooting and ask yourself, what is going wrong and what is going right for them? And sometimes it's really something as simple as adjusting to like a new 3-point line or luck. You know what I mean? And we don't want to talk about how much luck plays a part in sports, but it plays a huge part in sports. plays a huge part in baseball, plays a huge part in basketball, plays probably a huger part in football. But luck is a huge part of sports. So specifically, I think that you need to look at luck adjustments, right? Small sample size. Scotty Barnes shot like 27%, 26% from three at Florida State. Now, he hasn't exactly been a world beater as a shooter, but he is definitely much, much better in the NBA than he was in college, and that's with the expanded line. And we saw potential as a shooter from him both last year and this year, especially the earlier parts of this year before, his legs got super tired from all the defense. And he was clearly in the 36, 37% range, and I expect him to be 35 to 37% next year. So, it's not impossible. It's not impossible for a guy like Stephon Castle. Like, I thought he took I'd be very surprised if Stephon Castle ends up being a 40% three-point shooter in the NBA. I'd be very surprised if any of these guys with shaky jumpers right now become 39 to 42% three-point shooters. Typically, it's not going to happen. You'd be betting against the odds for that to happen. However, getting to 36% should be within the realm of possibilities for every single person who has a consistent mechanics. And that's what I like about Ron Holland and Stephon Castle is, like, I think their shots are fixable. They're not broken shots. They're not like flinging the basketball. They're not like, there's not like 6 different motions to their jumper. Like, there's some sort of consistency. There's just tweaks that need to be made. And then once the tweaks are made, then the repetitions are had. So Nathan Taylor saying it's not just this year. Bronny has always been passive. Yeah, for sure. I think there's a fine line between being passive and being unselfish, right? And it's interesting because, like, I think whether you're talking about the men's game or the women's game, Paige Beckers, against Iowa was passive. I felt like she was passive. She was not assertive. She's also a very unselfish basketball player. But I think sometimes you get into a realm of, like, again, the way offense needs to flow on any level is your best players need to be your best players, which means your best players need to be threats. What I realized watching Caitlin Clark play a lot was how much her gravity as a shooter made her better as a passer. And that's something I realized now also with all players in the NBA, whether you're talking Emmanuel Quickly, him becoming a true 3-level scorer is going to make him a better playmaker. So it's the same thing with Bronny James. It's like Bronny James has a phenomenal IQ for the game. Problem is, without the jumper at his size, with his limited athleticism, he's not a super athlete. He's not like super bursty, or his first step's not great. You just start to run out of real estate in terms of how many advantages you can have over your defender. And really what it means is, can you win a possession? How do you win a possession? You get past your man. That's it. You score at an efficient rate, or you get past your man in order to collapse the defense. It's really that simple. When Scotty Barnes describes basketball as a very simple game, that's really that simple. I can throw it into Zach Edey in the post in college basketball and generate 1.3-ish points per possession, right? 1.2 to 1.3 points per possession. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head exactly. Or I can collapse the floor and open up a corner shooter. If you send that double team slow, or if you send it incorrectly from the wrong angle, it's probably going to result in an and one. And if you don't, it's probably going to result in 2 points if the other team doesn't have a defender who can guard them. And if you send it like in an uncontrolled way, in which your scheme does not allow for the quick recovery to the shooter, then it's probably going to result in open threes for guys who are more than capable of shooting them. And so, yeah, that's a win. That's an automatic win. It's like a hack for your offense. And so having a guy, who's like a 3-level scorer like a Luka Doncic, who can, like, thread the needle and exploit the defense on all levels. This is crazy. This is a crazy advantage for the offense. And so when I look at a guy like Bronny James, I'm just like, how is he supposed to win a possession? He doesn't win possessions, not at college and not in the NBA. I don't think he's going to win possessions in the NBA either. So then the question becomes, okay, if you can't win possessions, can you help your team win possessions? Therein lies the conundrum of, Can you space for your teammates? Can you screen for your teammates? Can you do other things? Can you crash the offensive glass? You got to do something. It's not football, right? Basketball is a very unique sport in that there are only 5 players on the basketball court. It's not American football or your European, soccer or whatever, where there's 11 guys. You can disperse all of this, talent across 11, and the impact of any one person is somewhat muted. The reason the basketball is so specific, and the reason that the more talented the league becomes, the higher the bar for any individual player becomes, is because when there are only 5 guys on the court, one guy always makes a difference. Flashback 15 years ago, not uncommon at all to have a big who did not score, or having a big who just hung around in the paint and cleaned up, gobbled up rebounds, or a small forward who just stood in the corner and shot threes. We're not there anymore. That's over. You can't just have a guy who shoots corner threes. That guy needs to be able to dribble, pass, shoot. That guy needs to be able to drive to the basket, collapse the defense. He needs to be able to pass the basketball. He needs to be able to sprint back in transition. He needs to be able to handle the ball in the pick and roll. He needs to be able to set screens. The more of these things that he can do, the more options your offense has. Emmanuel quickly can set screens. He can shoot. Now he's a 3-level scorer. He's also coming along as a passer. Do you understand how much better Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett are today than the players that we got from New York? I don't think Knicks fans realize it either. I don't know if that Knicks guy who was here before realizes it either. But I'm telling you that if there were a Knicks fan who is religiously watching Raptor games today just to check in on these guys are profoundly better players than they were as Knicks. So anyways, all of this to say that whoever you draft at 6, 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever, 17, 31, none of these players are coming in as complete players. You just need to evaluate as a front office which parts of their games scale up, which parts of their games can be fixed, which parts of their games are going to remain weaknesses, what's the floor, what's the ceiling. I don't think scouting is that complicated. It is, however, inexact. And so the Raptors are going to have to guess. And I'm going to guess that with 3 chances, they're going to land an all-star level talent with one of those picks. I'm looking forward to figuring out who that player is. I'm looking forward to rooting on their success. And I, for one, am very happy that that player will enter a situation in which I don't have to worry that they are entering a toxic situation. They will enter a supportive situation with a supportive superstar who's going to take them under his wing. They're going to enter a cool culture. I'm happy to see it. Congratulations to the UConn Huskies, making a little bit of history as one of the rare teams that have gone back-to-back. Congratulations to coach. Congratulations to the players. Be very interesting to see. Last year I was very, very adamant that the Raptors draft Jordan Hawkins. I'm very happy now in hindsight that we didn't, that we drafted Grady Dick. But at the time, I was a very big fan of Jordan Hawkins. I remain a fan of Jordan Hawkins. Be very interesting to see if the Raptors do keep that 6th overall pick, if one of these 2 Huskies will be in play. I believe they'll both be in play at that pick. I'm not petitioning for either of those guys to be the pick. I'm just saying there'll be 2 guys that we're going to talk about a lot over the next couple of months. So hopefully you got a chance to watch them. All right. InfiTech. Zach Edey has the highest college box plus minus since 2010. Fair point. Let me give you another fair point. Most players who are as good as Zach Edey don't stay in college basketball. Hence the whole point about the NIL, right? A player who is 14, 15 box plus minus, which is where he was, I believe, as a sophomore, or at least as a junior, probably would have gone to the NBA already. What if to get Clingan at 6 and Edey at 17? Then they deserve to be fired. Okay, talk to y'all later. Peace.